Conversation, as you said, has to happen no matter what we hear in the next 15 minutes. It just has to.
It's essential. And I think, at the other extreme of this is that we're now looking at the Dante Wright case. This is a conversation that's longitudinal. It's not something that we're going to overcome in the next year. We really have to get beyond this idea that this is just about what happens in this case. We have to think about, as a community as a whole, what it would mean for us to reimagine our laws, to take a hard look at our structures, not to be destabilized by language like defund the police, but understand the impulse behind that, and where people are saying we should invest our monies and our energies in trying to create equitable policing in communities that people feel safe and secure in. At the end of the day, I think still the most compelling witness may be Charles McMillan and the words that he shared with Derek Chauvin about wanting him to go home safe at the end of the day and wanting people in the community to be able to go home safe. At the end of the day, we want a Twin Cities, a community we can be proud of, but that can only happen if we're going to privilege the safety and security of all of our residents. And that means dealing with racial disparities as they are presently constituted and thinking about ways that we don't lose momentum on this. This is not the time to take our foot off the gas and to assume that this is over. This is the time to dig in even deeper. This is the time to invest. This is the time to really think about tackling disparities and making our community whole.
Absolutely. I want to ask you one more question, Dr. Williams, and then I'll let you go. But I want to check back in with you after the verdict. I want to ask you this. The defense attorney said in this case on one of the first days, this case isn't about race. Was he right?
No, he wasn't right. This case is absolutely about race. And it would be wrong for us to assume that the third rail in American politics hasn't exerted a huge influence over this. We all know as we're awaiting this verdict that this is a moratorium on race and policing in America and the insecurity, the relative insecurity that communities of color, particularly African Americans, feel around policing as it's directed against Black and brown people in the United States. I understand that appeal, but at the core, this is as much a moratorium on race as it is on criminal justice, and ultimately as it will be in our community in terms of how we address broader issues of economic disparity as a whole.
Dr. Williams, the founding director of the Racial Justice Initiative at the University of St. Thomas, we thank you for your time. We'll check back in with you later. Randy and Julie.
Wow, Jana, that was a fabulous conversation. It reminds me what the governor said last night too, of we can't keep living like this. We can't keep living like this.
It's got to change. Let's go down to 38th in Chicago. Devon Roming is standing by live right now. Devon?
Hey, Randy. Hey, Julie. We are live here at 38th in Chicago, where in just a few minutes that verdict is going to be coming down. And when we arrived out here a little bit ago, it was pretty quiet. It was pretty quiet with media that were gathering here and some of the folks who have been holding ground here since last year. Everyone was just kind of holding in their emotions. But just a minute ago, we had a young lady that just stepped in here at the mural that's down here at the site where George Floyd died. And she is now talking to the crowd, asking them to pray. If you believe in God, asking them to pray that everything goes in the favor that these folks want this verdict decision to go to. And so that's what she's doing right now. She is leading them in a prayer session here right now, and just really hoping for the best in this verdict that we're all awaiting here.
We had a reporter on earlier, Madison Carter, who was saying that a lot of people went to George Floyd Square today because they just felt they had to do something, and sitting home on their phones didn't feel very productive. It looks like there's a pretty healthy sized crowd there behind you right now, Devon.
Yeah, there is a pretty decent crowd, and the crowd actually is continuing to grow as word is spreading that a verdict is in. We are seeing more people that are starting to make their way down here to 38th in Chicago to not only pay their respects, but to be a part of this historic moment. This is a very historic day for our country when it comes to the decisions that are getting ready to come forth out of the courtroom in this case. And so that's why people are making their way down of this moment here, where really is ground zero, which is where everything started.
Hey, Devon, this is Lou here. I'm curious, Devon, how is everybody preparing to learn the verdict? Are they looking at their phones? Do they have TVs around there, or what's everybody's plan?
Well, it seems like a lot of people are on their phones. I don't see any sort of like TV screens or TV set up anywhere. Most people are just kind of taking things as they come by their phone, word of mouth. A lot of people are down here with cameras, not just media, but folks who actually live in this area and protesters that have been down in this area. They have cameras out and whatnot. And so it seems like everyone's just kind of depending on their handheld devices right now, just awaiting that verdict.
Okay. Devon, thank you so much. We'll check back in with you. We want to let you know that 20 minutes after the verdict is read, Keith Ellison will hold a news conference at the Government Center in Minneapolis, and 1 hour after the verdict is read, the Floyd family attorney Ben Crump will be speaking along with the Floyd family about an hour after the verdict is read. All right, I think we want to go to Charmaine.
Yeah, Charmaine's right outside the Government Center, keeping an eye on what that crowd and what the emotions are like there. Charmaine?
Yes, that's right. There's a large crowd out here. There's a lot of media, but there's also a lot of groups out here. We see a lot of Black Lives Matter flags. We see a lot of people coming in, and we also see a lot of groups like Twin Cities Relief Initiative. We have Latoya here, who they're out here always, cooking, grilling. Tell us what you're doing out here.
Well, we are out here to feed the community and to hope for the verdict that we are all looking for, but just a little distraction, just to give people a sense of, a little relief from Twin Cities Relief. So.
And I know that you guys are constantly out here. This is not just a one-time thing. Tell me about some of the things that you guys have been doing since, that happened last May.
Well, since then, we've been making sure we get, anytime there's a protest, rally, anything, a call for justice, we make sure we're out there with grills. We've had essential handouts. We've had clothing drives. We also had a Christmas drive also where we gathered toys and got those out. So, we stay active. Every month we're doing at least a few things, and at the very least we're going to get out there with our grills, hand out some produce because we have collaborations that we teamed up with a farm all out in Buffalo. So we've been doing quite a bit since last May.
And the energy out here, I've been asking everyone this question because you guys have been out here a lot longer than I am. What energy do you feel now that we're awaiting that verdict?
Oh man, the obvious tension. The anxiety, it hasn't gotten any better with time. It started like that. Was it, are you going to arrest them? And then after they arrested them, what are they going to charge them with? And after they charge them, then are you actually going to get a conviction? So there's been no relief from the time it happened. So it's just a heightened level of anxiety, pressure, tension. How many other ways can you say it?
No, we just fed up. We just want justice. That's all. Just give us some justice. That's it. That's all.
And thank you so much. I'll let you guys get back to it because you are working hard out here setting this up. So we're going to stay out here and continue to bring you what we're seeing out here outside the courthouse, but we're going to send it back to you.
All right, Charmaine, thank you.
Well, Lauren Lemanchek was one of the reporters who spent a day inside the courtroom during this trial. Of course, because of the pandemic, it was a very odd setup, one like we've never seen before. And I just wanted to talk to you, Lauren, and you've obviously covered other trials as well. Can you describe, first of all, what this particular courtroom looks like, and then what it's like to be in that room before and when a verdict is read? We'll give her 1 minute here to get her mic working. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Must just needed to have been hit. I'll hit a little bit there. But the thing that has stuck out to me this whole time, unlike other trials that I have covered, is the fact that there is just one family representative from each side in that courtroom. And they sit on a chair in the corner. The day that I was there, no one was there from Derek Chauvin's family, although in later days there were people there. But every day, Floyd family members rotate in and out of that courtroom. And when I was there, it was when they were playing video that showed the moment George Floyd took his last breath. It was an incredibly emotional moment for anyone who watched a man die in that moment. And his brother was in there and staring straight ahead. And I thought about how in any other trial, there would be someone there to put his arm around him or hold his hand, or the family would be leaning on each other for support. And in today, what's going to be really fascinating is usually when a verdict is read, it is this moment where one family is elated, one family is devastated. And today, there's just going to be one person from each side. So I just have to imagine it's going to be very quiet. And I can't even imagine the emotions for those people having to be in there on their own. The Floyd family's been incredibly strong throughout this whole process. Brothers, cousins, nieces, nephews, all rotating in and out to be there and bear witness to what is happening in that courtroom. And later on, as I said, members of the Chauvin family were there as well. And so really, you just have them, you have the lawyers, jurors each sit in their own chair, spaced apart because of COVID. The jurors look directly at Derek Chauvin, which is another unusual thing. He looks directly at them. And so the setup is just really unusual in there, not like any courthouse or any courtroom that anyone's ever been in. And yesterday, I know we do have some sound, Julie and Randy, because I spoke with A.L. Brown, who was talking about his take. He's an attorney who's provided incredible insight to us throughout this trial. And he was telling us about how he thought if there wasn't a verdict today, it meant trouble for the prosecution.
Mm-hmm. We want to point out it's 3:32 right now. So if we see that there's movement in court, we will go to that obviously immediately. So we don't mean to cut somebody off because of that, but we are watching court on one of our monitors here. And we were told the verdict would be read sometime between 3:30 and 4 o'clock.
Let's bring in Brock Hunter now. He's provided some excellent insight for us throughout this trial, a criminal defense attorney. Mr. Hunter, you and I were talking in the lobby last night about this case overall, and you said for the defense, this was not a case any defense attorney would want to have to try. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, sure, Julie. I think Eric Nelson needs to be commended for the job he's done on this case. This has been kind of a David versus Goliath kind of situation, and that has been one attorney against a very large team of prosecutors, upwards of a dozen or more from what I've understood, and tens of thousands of pages of documents and evidence that he's had to handle. And then there's the scrutiny of the entire world watching. So the pressure on Eric, I don't think could be any higher for a criminal defense lawyer.
Can you talk a little bit about the sentencing, what he's facing, depending on what the verdict comes back, if it comes back against him?
Sure. Well, each of these charges he's facing range from, on the lower end, the manslaughter charge, a presumptive guideline sentence of 48 months, so about 4 years. With respect to the second-degree murder, the highest charge, around 150 or so months. But also remember that the state is seeking aggravated upward departures here on a number of bases: a child present, a position of authority, a special cruelty. And Derek Chauvin waived his right to have the jury consider whether those aggravating factors are present, meaning that Judge Cahill will be making that decision. And if he finds those aggravating factors are present, then he is free to sentence Derek Chauvin to the maximum potential sentence, which in this case on the second-degree murder charge would be 20 years.
Let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing. We're looking at some live shots outside the Hennepin County Courthouse, which really lends itself to the pressure and the emotions and the responsibility on this particular jury. Every juror takes that job seriously, we certainly hope, especially in a murder trial. It's hard to even imagine what these jurors felt. And I know Lauren had mentioned they seemed to be a tight-knit group already on the day that she was in the courtroom observing them. This is a tremendous, maybe even a nearly unprecedented amount of pressure on these jurors.
Certainly unprecedented in my experience. In our lifetimes, and I would say probably ever. The O.J. Simpson trial comes to mind 20 plus years ago, but this case, I think, has impacted our community and our country in a way that even the O.J. Simpson trial didn't. And of course, we now have social media and so many other ways that this case has just permeated everything. And so this is, without any precedent that I could think of.
Hey, Brock, Lou here. Thanks again for helping us out throughout this trial.
Thank you, Lou.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about the timing of the deliberations? About 10 hours of deliberation. The jury, they may have been tilted one way to start out. Is that enough time to come up with a split verdict, or is it most likely a verdict straight down the line?
I've been talking with my colleagues about this all day, and certainly since we received news of the verdict, Lou, our feeling is that this verdict coming back so quickly weighs pretty heavily in favor of the idea that it will be a conviction on all three counts. And the reason for that is we just feel that there wasn't enough time for the jurors to reach any kind of an agreement regarding an acquittal on any of these 3 counts. I think that given the strength of the state's evidence, I think if there was a division among jurors on any of these counts, we would be seeing more days of deliberation.
Okay.
All right, and just one quick question for you before we ask you to hang on for a little bit longer. But I'm just wondering, what will this look like if he is convicted on any of the charges? Does he immediately go to jail today, or does he wait through sentencing?
Well, that's up to the judge. But if he is convicted, and because these are charges that carry presumptive prison sentences, it is not unusual for the judge to change the conditions of release and to take a defendant into custody after a finding of guilt. And under the circumstances here, I guess I would be surprised if Judge Cahill did not do that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, Brock, so much. We want to let people know it's 3:37. When and if they start the proceedings in court, we will take that immediately. Devon Roming, standing by at 38th in Chicago. The crowd is growing outside the Hennepin County Government Center, certainly growing at 38th in Chicago as well. Devon?
Hey, Randy, yeah, you are right. The crowd has definitely grown since we got out here nearly an hour ago. I'm going to step out of the shot just so you guys can see what's kind of unfolding behind me here. Obviously, this is the very intersection where George Floyd died nearly a year ago here while in police custody. And at this same site nearly a year ago, people are gathering to be a part of this historic day as we await this verdict in this trial. Right now, the crowd here has been hearing from some of the self-proclaimed gatekeepers of George Floyd Square. These are the people that have been out here holding ground really since this incident happened almost a year ago. And now they are talking to this crowd. They've asked people that, you know, if they have a faith, if they believe in God, they've been asking them to pray that things go in their favor, that the verdict that we're all awaiting comes out in their favor. And that's basically what's happening right now. We've seen a lot of people that have been hugging. There are people out here who are holding signs with pictures and paintings of George Floyd. There are people that are holding signs that say Black Lives Matter. And it's really a mixed crowd of people, mixed crowd of emotions, and everyone's just kind of hunkered down here in anticipation of what's to come here in the next few minutes.
All right, Devon, thank you so much. We'll check back. We appreciate it. We're going to take a live look right now. You can see this is just outside the Hennepin County Government Center. One of our reporters earlier made the observation that it seemed like a lot of people who work downtown, once they heard news the verdict was coming, were quick to get out of downtown. But at the same time, lots of people pouring into downtown in anticipation of this verdict. And of course, as a community, we have all been on edge during this trial and really throughout the past year since George Floyd died. And we know that there is an extraordinary police presence and the National Guard in downtown Minneapolis and throughout the Twin Cities tonight. For some people we've talked to, that makes them feel more secure. For some people, that puts them even more on edge. But the fact is, a lot of businesses have been boarding up, and the governor has even asked other states to come and lend their hand in making sure whatever the verdict is, we keep the peace. And Rena Sargentopoulos has been doing just a wonderful job, along with Lou Ragoose and our team here, of covering this trial. And I know you've been watching social media and trying to follow updates from Operation Safety Net. Have they said anything during this time?
You know, it's interesting, Julie, because they were supposed to have a press briefing, a news conference coming up here at 4 o'clock, and they did cancel that today, obviously, because of the impending verdict that we're waiting for. And we haven't seen them really talking about anything. My guess is because they are preparing for what is happening or could potentially be happening downtown. And you talked about the people leaving downtown and people trying to get in downtown, and we are seeing a lot of that on social media, people talking about how bad the traffic is, or that they were told to leave downtown. And one of the things that Brock mentioned just about the historic nature of this verdict and this trial, we're seeing a lot of that sentiment online too. People saying the Chauvin verdict is as monumental as the ones for Rodney King, O.J. Simpson, Marcus Robinson, and others. No wonder it's causing so much anxiety. The Chauvin verdict is expected very soon, short deliberations and a swift decision from the jury.
A nation on edge. This is history in the making for millions of Americans. The anguish and anticipation are immeasurable. And that is just about, you cannot encapsulate that any better than what that person said there. A lot of people on edge as we wait any minute now for this verdict in this case.
All right, Rena, thank you so much. Let's go back downtown. Danny Spiewak has a bird's eye view of what we're looking at right now that's on the ground of this picture. Danny, your observations.
Well, Randy, what's jumping out to me right now is, of course, the National Guard has been such a presence downtown and, of course, has almost become a part of daily life for those who live in Minneapolis during this trial. Normally, they have 2 soldiers that are stationed sort of on top of the government center. If you're familiar with the government center, there's those steps that lead up to a top entrance. Well, right now they have about a half dozen soldiers. Haven't seen a ton of movement other than that. They're just kind of keeping watch, and right now there are just small groups of people that are gathering in the lawn of the government center. The observations are spot on from all of my colleagues and those on social media as well that have noticed that there's traffic leaving downtown, still seeing some cars that are moving here even at this late hour, with those who know that a verdict is coming within minutes, but other cars that are starting to fill up all the spots. The street parking, which for the last 3 weeks and even into jury selection beyond that in early March was never filled, well, now they're all filled. You can't even get a parking spot in downtown Minneapolis because so many people have been coming to gather here and try to take in this moment, as they know they are just feet from where this decision is happening. Although, of course, because of COVID, only a limited number of people are allowed in there. Only 2 reporters, 1 broadcast reporter and 1 print reporter, pool reporters, to be able to witness this moment. So we're seeing grills down there. We can even smell that up here on the roof. People are just anticipating and waiting. That's all they can do right now. They can try to predict what it means that the jury came back quickly, but at this point, they're just waiting like the rest of us.
Yeah, and knowing that I'm sure they will be there. This will be a moment in history, and they want to be there to experience it together. Thank you so much, Danny. We have Charmaine Nero, who is amongst the crowd there outside the government center. Charmaine, what are you seeing and hearing?
Hi, yes. As I said earlier, there is still a very much growing crowd out here. We even see this table here with a vendor selling Black Lives Matter shirts. So right now he has set this up since we've got here, and we're going to pull him in now. Sir, hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing here. I know you're real busy right now.
I'm just selling some masks and T-shirts and things, or just some support, and just so we can just have things being in solidarity of on the same page with what we're trying to do, as far as just trying to understand that all lives matter, not just Black lives, but all matters. I just pray that we can just come together as one. And I just pray that regardless of the outcome of this situation, we do not tear this city up, because we deserve to handle this in a better way.
And I was out here within the last hour, and this was not set up. So you got out here and you set this up within, I want to say, about 20 minutes.
Yeah, when I heard the makeshift of the decisions when they come down, but we read at 4 o'clock, and someone told me that, and I just said, let me get out here and see if I can just, do the best I can with what I'm working with. Just hoping that this city is not overthrown with a lot of negativity like it has been, that we have to board up and all these things. It's really sad, though, that we have to resort to that way to find justice. So I pray that we don't have to tonight.
Well, thank you so much. I know you're busy, so I'll let you get back to work. But like I said, he's selling masks, he's selling materials, and this is just what we've been seeing out here, not just today, but during the earlier protests. There are groups out here, not just the growing crowds, but there are vendors. There's Twin Cities Relief Initiative providing food for people out here. So right now, the energy out here is very positive, but of course, we are waiting for that verdict to come in to see if that all changes. So we're gonna stay out here and continue to let you know what's going on. Back to you.
Charmaine, thank you so much. It's 3:45, and once again, we are keeping an eye on court. Let's reset for everybody that maybe is just joining us right now. A verdict is about to be read in court. Lou Raguse has been following this trial along with Rena and Jana all the way through. Lou, just kind of reset what we're about to see.
Okay, we're expecting the verdict any moment now, and we're keeping an eye on the courtroom right now. The camera's zoomed in on the seal of the state of Minnesota. That's been our cue throughout this entire trial, that there's nothing going on at the moment. And as soon as you start to see movement there, that's when you keep hearing us say, when there's movement, we'll take you to the courtroom. That's when we know that they're about to go, as we've been covering this trial over the cameras in the court. And so Derek Chauvin is charged with 3 crimes: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. And the jury needs to come to a unanimous verdict on all those counts. If it's not unanimous, they can't acquit. If it's not unanimous, they can't convict. And so that means 12-0 vote. And so we heard at about 2 or 2:30 that the jury had come to a verdict and that it would be read between 3:30 and 4. And so any moment now, we'll bring you to the court and we will learn Derek Chauvin's fate.
Just to clarify, when you say unanimous decision on all 3 counts, correct me if I'm wrong, they can find him guilty of second-degree murder, but not third-degree, not manslaughter.
It could be a split verdict, yes. They could be
okay.
not guilty of one of them and guilty of 2 of them, or any combination like that. You know, as some of our guests were saying, you know, in just anticipating, and because of the speed that the verdict was reached, it was their thought that it would be more likely to be the same verdict across the board, just because of the speed. And a lot of times when there are jurors hung up, that's when the deliberations can last day after day after day. But after 10 hours of deliberation, this jury reached a decision, which is extremely fast for a case of this magnitude.
Yeah, and not one question we noticed as well. We were all on standby. If there was going to be a question from the jurors, they would have brought up the live shot. The judge would have been there reading it. We all would have heard it, but no questions from the jury. A very speedy, it would appear, deliberation. And Lou, can you explain for all of us now what happens moving forward? Because if he is convicted, he does not find out his fate for, could be a month or so.
No,
correct?
Sentencing does not happen on the spot. And there's a little bit of a difference in what can happen with the sentencing. So if he is convicted, most likely he will be handcuffed and led to jail to await sentencing. Now that's up to the judge, and the judge could choose to allow him to remain free. In the Mohammed Noor case, he was arrested right away, and so I think the same thing would happen here. And then the next thing is the judge will set a sentencing date, and he will allow the attorneys to make their arguments, and it's called briefs, which are arguments in writing, as to whether there are aggravating factors or not. The judge will decide then if there are aggravating factors, meaning that he can give a higher sentence than what's allowed within the sentencing guidelines. The sentencing guidelines, if he were to be convicted of second-degree murder or third-degree murder, the sentencing guidelines would only allow a 12-and-a-half-year or a 15-year at the most sentence, and for the manslaughter, it would only be 4 years. But if he's allowed to go above the guidelines, then the statutory maximum would be 40 years for second degree, 25 years for third degree, or 10 years for second degree manslaughter. So there's a lot of different possibilities to play out, and that would likely be a few weeks after the verdict is read here.
Well, and Lou, let's talk for a minute about that second-degree murder charge. What would the state have had to prove for the conviction to come on that count?
Well, the reason that it's so complicated is that they have to also prove an underlying assault, and that assault would require proving intent. And so some people were worried, like, well, they won't be able to prove that he intended to hurt George Floyd if there's a juror who thinks that it might have been an accident. But as it turned out, the instruction that they received was the intent. All the intent means is that he intended to put his knee on him. And then at some point that was an unlawful act and it caused great bodily or substantial bodily harm to George Floyd, which would just mean a loss of consciousness. And so you can see how the jury would be able to come to the conclusion that there was an underlying assault and that the knee was a substantial factor in George Floyd's death. That was the other thing. It didn't have to be the only factor in George Floyd's death. And so if there was a juror who thought, well, maybe underlying health conditions played a role or maybe drugs played a role, well, it still could. And they still could find Derek Chauvin guilty as long as his actions played a substantial causal factor.
And there was a little bit of drama, maybe more than a little bit, in closing arguments when Eric Nelson, the defense attorney, made it appear that that was not the case, correct? And there are several legal experts surprised the state did not object.
Yes, so they felt that Eric Nelson had misstated the law in his closing argument to the jury, but the judge said, you know what, it's your job as the prosecutors in your rebuttal, which Jerry Blackwell then did give his rebuttal, it's your job to set them straight. And Jerry Blackwell did do that in his rebuttal, and the judge just let it go after that. I mean, I think that a lot of this case has gotten so much attention and so much scrutiny that every little thing makes people worry. But I think in Judge Cahill's eyes, he thought, like, you know what, just fix it in your rebuttal, and they can go off the instructions which they have on paper in front of them for deliberations.
All right, Lou, thank you so much. Stand by. We are all standing by for court and for a verdict to be read. Let's go back to 38th in Chicago. Devon Roming is standing by live. Devon?
Hey!
Hey, Randy. Yeah, we are still hunkered down here at 38th in Chicago. Of course, many people know this is the same intersection where George Floyd was killed nearly a year ago. If you take a look behind me, the crowd has grown exceptionally large here since we first got out here. There have been various chants that people have been chanting. People have been chanting Black Lives Matter. People have been chanting prosecute the police. And everyone's just kind of in a space where they are just waiting to see exactly what's going to happen, what's going to come out of this courtroom here in this verdict that we've all been waiting for over the last year or so, really, since this whole entire thing went down. I've been talking to different people that have been out here, and people say that they just wanted to be a part of history. This is a historic day for our country, and that's why they felt the need to be out here. There are families here with kids that are out here. There are interracial couples. There are same-sex couples. There's a wide range of people that are out here wanting to be a part of this, wanting their voice to be heard, and wanting really, just again, to be a part of this historic day here in our city. Guys, back to you.
All right, Devon, thank you so much. And we are doing continuing coverage here from the moment that we heard that there would be a verdict read. We have been on the air and we've been watching at the same time the live feed from the Hennepin County Courthouse and the courtroom where the judge and jury will reconvene to read that verdict. We were told it would happen between 3:30 and 4. As of yet, we have not seen a lot of action in the courtroom, but we do know that Derek Chauvin has arrived in the building. We also know that 20 minutes after the verdict is read, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, whose office prosecuted this case, says he will hold a press conference, and an hour after the verdict is read, the family's attorney, George Floyd's attorney, is planning on holding a press conference as well. This is going to be a busy night. It's going to be an emotional night, no matter which way this goes, and we will be here watching it every step of the way, as have Rena Sargentopoulos and Lou Ragoose on KARE 11. You've probably been watching them every day. Rena, I wanted to bring you into the conversation. I've appreciated the way you've watched the trial, much in the same way I did, and would often interject saying, you know, I'm no legal scholar. I'm just watching this as someone, same way someone is watching it from home. After spending hours and hours and hours watching this trial, was there anything that stuck out to you, whether it had to do with the trial, the emotions around it, the attorneys, anything now that it's all nearly said and done that really is sticking with you?
Absolutely, Julie. I mean, it was just, like you said, I'm certainly not a legal mind, and Lou has been so great about that side of it. But it's been interesting to just kind of watch as someone who hasn't covered trials, really, to figure out how our legal system worked. And I felt like I was kind of surprised by a lot of things that happened. And, you know, I was taking some of the viewer questions that were coming in, like, why was there allowed to be so much emotion on the stand? We usually think of as trials like this where you're not allowed to bring that emotion in, but we saw a ton of emotion on the stand, mostly obviously from the witnesses who were there, and that was truly impactful. And then, you know, even as a journalist, I chose not to watch the video up until this point, and then having to watch every minute of this trial, I watched that video just like the jurors did over and over and over again. So I was struck really by what the jurors had to go through emotionally, just the time spent in there. And I know we've heard from so many people that they take it so very seriously, but I think I was struck the most by what the jurors had to witness every single day and how this may potentially change their lives going forward in the future, and also knowing that someone's life hangs in the balance and that someone's life was lost in all of this.
Absolutely.
It was truly emotional.
Well, I appreciate that. I knew that you would have something insightful to say, and we would come and kind of swap out roles here in the newsroom at the end of the day, and I would just look at both you and Lou and think, wow, you know, sitting there all day, even not as a juror, is an emotional and right. It's a big job, so it's hard to imagine being a jury. Yeah.
I think people who have watched this trial over the last 3 weeks, if you didn't know much about how a trial operates,
Without a doubt.
think we all got an incredible education in 3 weeks.
And speaking of the jurors, Lou, I just want to ask you a quick question here about them and their identities. We know, of course, right now that they, for their own safety, they're being kept anonymous. It's up to the judge, correct, to decide when their names would be published and their identities known. You know, I think all of us feel for them. the responsibility. We know how high the emotions are on both sides, and it seems that, we know that the defense attorney has received threats. One of the defense witnesses, a former home was vandalized in California. There's a lot of emotion around this. How does a judge make that decision?
Well, it is Derek Chauvin's constitutional right to have a fair and open trial, that the jurors' names will be eventually released. The precedents that exist are like mob cases, where literally the jurors' heads are, on a hit list when a mobster is being brought under trial. In the Knorr case, they waited a full year before the judge released them in that case, and I think it's fair to say by the time that they released those names that those jurors were in no danger. Okay, but I'm sure they were very worried. Mm-hmm. But I think that the argument could be made that there were not people that wanted to go and get them for their verdict. It'll be tough for Judge Cahill in this case to decide at what point it's safe to release those names, but he's made it clear that it will happen at some point.
Lou, thank you so much. Let's check in one more time with Charmaine. She is down at the Hennepin County Government Center. Charmaine?
Hi, yes, we've been out here for at least the last hour, but I want to take you right to what we're seeing now. They're chanting no justice, no peace. A large crowd out here. You can see just how many people. Hundreds of people, a lot of media, a lot of people that just came to the scene holding signs that say justice for George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. So you can tell this is very organized. People got out just within the hour. They were ready, prepared for this verdict that everyone's been waiting for since this all happened back in May. The energy, as we've asked people prior, the organizations that are out here said it's positive energy now as people are hoping for a verdict that favors to what they were expecting. But you can see the emotions out here, lots of signs, lots of diversity, a lot of groups out here that are always out here. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces, but looking into the crowd now, you can see people are holding signs, lots of media. So this is just the energy that we see out here, and we can only expect it's going to keep growing as the night progresses. But we're walking through right now and showing you what we're seeing. Some people are holding the food that we saw earlier that's being cooked for people out here. But right now, I want to say there's good energy out here. A lot of people are just waiting, gathering for that verdict to come. Back to you.
All right, Charmaine, thank you so much. We appreciate your perspective on the ground and being our eyes and ears there. We want to bring back Brock Hunter now, a criminal defense attorney who's been watching this trial with us for some perspective. I want to pose that same question I did to Lou, to you, Mr. Hunter, about the jury, their security, their anonymity, and what the judge takes into consideration when deciding when to release their identities to the public.
Sure, Julie. I can't think of another case in which this issue of jury anonymity and security is more significant. And certainly the judge is going to be taking into consideration, just how much danger these jurors might be in. I think if the jury comes back convicting on all counts, that level of security concern is going to be lower than if they were coming back and acquitting Derek Chauvin on one or more counts. But I think, we have to assume that whatever the judge's decision is, that the identities of these jurors, one way or another, is going to make it out into the public. Once the trial is over, jurors are free to talk to the media, and from that point on, the identities of the jurors become a lot harder for the court to hide and control, release from the public.
Well, I have a more of a procedural question for you now. We heard, I guess it was at about 2:30, that a verdict was imminent. It was going to be read between 3:30 and 4. What is happening in that downtime? And now it is 4 o'clock, so clearly it's going to be read a little bit later in that. What are they doing? What's happening behind the scenes?
Well, a lot of times it is waiting for all of the necessary parties to assemble. And with everybody flowing into downtown with news of the verdict, we may be running into some issues with just some of the folks who need to be there in the courtroom being able to get to the courthouse and through security. There is also perhaps chambers conferences going on with the attorneys and the judge discussing various procedures that they're going to follow once the verdict is read. A lot of housekeeping that is going to need to be taken care of, any one of which could be delaying the verdict actually being read.
One more question for you. As we prepare to see the verdict being read, what will that look like? Will the judge speak, and then will he, kind of walk us through what we will see?
Sure. Well, if you're in the courtroom, what you see is that the jury comes in and the jury foreman hands an envelope with the verdict to the judge's clerk, and then the judge's clerk hands the verdict to the judge, who reads it. And then more often than not, the judge hands the verdict back to the clerk, and the clerk reads that verdict out loud. Judge Cahill may choose to read the verdict himself, but that's the way it's typically done in Minnesota courts.
All right, thank you so much, Brock. We'll have you continue standing by if you would. And as we have mentioned, we are keeping a live look at the courtroom up at all times. As soon as we get any indication they're ready to start, we will go there live immediately. But as of now, this is still the view that we are getting from inside the courtroom. We have our Boyd Hooper now, who is at a barbershop in North Minneapolis, to try to hear from people there what they're thinking and feeling. Boyd?
Yeah, Julie, actually not North Minneapolis, but South Minneapolis. We're on 38th, just a few blocks from George Floyd Square, at the Urban Touch Barbershop. Billy Hill is the owner here. Billy, I know you've got a number of people here, customers who are waiting around, as you are, for the verdict. What are you feeling right now?
Just a little nervous, anxiety, just for the unknown, just like everyone else. Just hoping for the best.
Everybody's been talking about the speed with which this verdict has been coming down.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think that because it came back so quick, that it's going to be that he's going to be charged. He's going to be charged, but the key thing is, what is he going to be charged with?
Hello?
That's the big question. That's the big question. What is he going to be charged with?
I know you've got TV sets, 3 of them here. You've been watching this trial for the last few weeks.
Yep.
What's your primary takeaway? What do you think the jurors looked at most closely as they had to make their decision?
I think what they end up doing is just really looking at the film, watching the footage, listening to the cries that George Floyd had ended up screaming out for his mother, and not letting anyone else, just play with their mind as far as anything else that was going to end up killing him. There was the pressure from the knee and holding him down for minutes of time that ended up killing that man.
We, as we drove in here today, you're again just a few blocks from 38th in Chicago. We saw boarded up windows. Your windows are not boarded up. Will they be? And if not, what's your thinking on that?
Well, I'm thinking that we're going to board them up. We boarded them up last year. So, everything is happening so fast right now. And so we're planning on it, though.
Okay. Oh, so they'll go up tonight? Or?
Yeah, they'll probably go up tonight.
Okay.
So.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We'll be here with you to take in the verdict.
Okay.
I know there's great interest in this shop, and you're very kind to allow us to be here to take that in with you. So thank you, Billy.
Thank you.
All right. Again, Billy Hill, the owner of Urban Touch Barbershop here on 38th. Again, we're just a few
Boyd, we're going to have to interrupt
Billy,
you. We
5 or 6
see the
blocks.
judge now has been seated and will listen in on the verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial.
All right, looks like the verdict's going to be read.
All rise for the
Stand by.
All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
This is called polling the jury.
Are these your verdicts, so say you one, so say you all?
Yes. Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So, all rise for the jury. All right, be seated. With the guilty verdicts returned, we're going to have Blakely, you may file a written argument as to Blakely factors within 1 week. The court will issue findings on the Blakely factors, the factual findings, 1 week after that. We'll order a PSI immediately returnable in 4 weeks. And we will also have a briefing on, after you get the PSI, 6 weeks from now, and then 8 weeks from now we will have sentencing. We'll get you the exact dates in a scheduling order. Is there a motion on behalf of the state?
Your Honor, the state would move to have the court revoke the defendant's bail and remand him into custody pending sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further?
All
right. Thank you. We're adjourned.
So there you have it. Derek Chauvin found guilty on all 3 charges: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. He is now being taken off to the Hennepin County Jail. Sentencing will take place in 8 weeks, about 2 months from now.
And it was a noticeable difference from Derek Chauvin's very stoic, non-emotional response to that verdict to the response from the crowd outside. Let's head outside now and check in with Charmaine Nero on the reaction of that crowd as word spread, Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts. Charmaine?
Hi, yes, as you can see out as you can hear out here, the energy is just, I mean, as soon as they read that verdict, you can hear just the cheers, people excited out here. You can see the crowd is still very reacting, I should say. We see a lot of people crying. I saw a couple of tears. You know, the energy out here was a relief, I want to say, for people when they read that those 3 charges for guilty. And here we are seeing just the crowd starting to disperse. So not as much tension out here, but just a lot of emotions, a lot of people just feeling the energy of what just happened. I mean, this is months and months of people just anxiously waiting for this verdict, and to hear that, we have one young lady right here who we saw crying, tears. And just, can we ask you how you're feeling right now?
I am so excited, so grateful to God. Our team, Restoration Incorporated, which is a faith-based human service agency that the city of Minneapolis chose to help bring peace and trauma, to help with the trauma, help outreach to our young people, and keep everyone safe. We've been praying nonstop for this verdict. And we are so thankful. I'm so thankful to God, because only a God could do something like this in America. I've never seen it, and I'm so excited to be alive and to be a part of the solution. And I say to all of our people, go home, celebrate in a way that's safe. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt anybody. Don't bother any stores. Just go home and celebrate. Restoration Incorporated, we're gonna have a big barbecue, and we're gonna celebrate justice.
And do you mind if I bring to you, because I saw tears coming out of your eyes when that verdict was read. Tell me what you were feeling.
I mean, it was just unbelievable. It's almost, I can't even explain it in words, just so loved, you know? And then the sun shined through, like, you know, after all these clouds, and it was just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful, and I can feel like the spirit on me right now, you know, and God's presence is definitely here, and it's, you know, it's really touching, and you know, to know that we are loved. So, you know, if everybody can know that, you know, it's true. God loves us so much.
And I know that when they did announce, when everybody heard that verdict being announced, it was a silence out here. It was, you can hear a pin drop. And then your tears started coming out immediately. Is this what you were hoping for?
Yes, justice. Justice and peace. Justice and peace. I got Veritas Equatus on my wrist, and it means truth and justice in Latin. You know, that's all we needed, you know, and harmony. This is a new start. You know, it's time for us to evolve. You know, evolve and come together as one. Unity together as a whole collection of beautiful souls out here. So, thank you.
Charmaine,
and that was
thank you
beautifully
so much.
said, and I wanted to talk to them so you can see yourself the emotions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with your shot. We will check back. But we also had Devon Rahming at 38th in Chicago, where emotions are running high as well. Devon, explain that reaction when the verdict was read.
Well, Julie, I got to tell you, this place erupted with cheers, with tears, very similar to what you heard Charmaine mention at the site that she's at. People just overcome with emotion at the fact that Derek Chauvin has been found guilty on all 3 charges. Many people we spoke with say this is the moment that they have been waiting for over the last year. They've spent the last year stressed and anxious, waiting for justice. One woman we spoke with said she feels like her babies are officially now safe, that this is the start of a new America for black children, for black men and women in this country. And she said that this is just the beginning, that there's still a long way to go when it comes to racial equality and all people being treated equal in this country. But she says this is just the beginning, and that's basically the same sentiment that we've been hearing from everyone who is partaking in this historic moment here at 38th in Chicago. Again, the same intersection where George Floyd was killed nearly a year ago. Julie?
Wow. Yeah, it's something to see, and it is something that we're sure will last for a while, and that we'll all remember where we were when that verdict was read. It has certainly been a historic trial. It has had the eyes of the world trained on our community, And there have been high emotions all around. And we've watched as the crowds, both outside the Government Center and 38th in Chicago, have grown throughout the afternoon once we knew the verdict was about to be read. With everyone hearing as it went through the crowd that it was guilty, 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 you can see the emotion from a community that maybe thought that this was not just a verdict about whether or not Derek Chauvin is guilty of the technical counts, but whether or not they would be heard, they would be acknowledged, that their whole community would be seen. And we do know that there are all kinds of feelings and emotions right now that people are feeling across the Twin Cities. Interesting, though, and I'm joined here in the studio, of course, by Randy and by Lou Ragoose and Rita Sargentopoulos and Janice Shortle, and how absolutely stoic and non-emotional Derek Chauvin was as he was handcuffed, as he heard his verdict, and as he was handcuffed and taken out of the courtroom. An interesting juxtaposition, not unexpected, of course, to the reaction outside of the courtroom. Jana, I know you've spent so much time talking with community members and people who have been trying to agitate for change and have been watching this very closely. What are your thoughts right now?
Thanks, Julie. You know, especially when we look at George Floyd Square, 38th in Chicago, I haven't seen that many people there that we just saw since last May and June.